And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, December 15th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by PrizePicks, the presenting sponsor of this show and of the process, Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. But now we're talking strategy show. Before we do any of that talking, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how did you enjoy our lovely 3-game slate yesterday?
I didn't. I got a lot of stuff right, but too much Cam Thomas. Didn't get to Kessler Edwards. Thought I was going to, but ended up not. So made it pretty tough to win.
Yeah, weird one yesterday. We didn't see all this time. We're like, oh no, Kevin Durant is not going to play today for the Nets. Turns out it was James Harden. No Harden for COVID, and now no like half of the league for COVID.
This shit's stupid.
It's getting pretty ridiculous right now. My assumption is this, and I don't think this is like a hot take or a new take, but I think people had a really free and enjoyable Thanksgiving, came back, and whoever caught it just gave it to everybody.
I mean that, and it's probably like Johnson & Johnson shots from a year ago. That
also not helping, I'm sure, but. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what we're going to do here. If they took a 2-week break, I would not be mad. Don't think it's going to happen, but
no,
they should be really awesome.
They should take a full month and then just space everything out, push it into the spring because we're not going to have baseball, and that's going to be really boring. So,
dude, if only. If they just were like, we're going to bring it back on February 1st and then play the entire schedule, I would be the happiest person ever. That would be amazing. I would go live somewhere else for the next 6 weeks, not here. That's for sure.
And then it would suck once baseball was like, oh yeah, no, we're going to play.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that like it never comes back.
Oh, I mean, I obviously for financial reasons would like it to come back as soon as possible.
Yeah, you just need to pick up a different sport at that time. That's all.
There's nothing else.
Wow, well, something's bound to show up.
Like, I mean, maybe like league is back. I don't know.
Well, something's got to replace baseball. If baseball goes away, we need a new high level sport. You'll have MMA every Saturday.
Yeah, true.
Not quite going to get it there. All righty. Well, we got a lot to talk about. 11 games on the slate. I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Yep.
First one up. Houston Rockets, 10.5-point underdogs in Cleveland, 221 total. And we just have a giant question mark here right out of the gate, which makes it very difficult to talk about this game to start. And that problem is we don't know the status officially of Christian Wood. He is questionable. We do know no Kevin Porter, no Jalen Green, no Eric Gordon as well, or Daniel House. That one doesn't matter all that much. So if Christian Wood plays, I have a little bit of interest in him on FanDuel at 8,300. Not too many other priorities here. Like Jayshawn Tate just sort of works no matter what, but no high-end options. What's really interesting for Houston is if Christian Wood doesn't play.
Yeah, because then you should get a lot of Şengün at 4,500 on DraftKings.
Yeah. Or potentially Daniel Tice at 3,300.
Yeah, maybe. Like if you could see him start and play like 24 minutes. I mean, I guess he could play more. My assumption if he starts would be he plays like 24, Şengün plays 24.
Same. We're on the same page there. And obviously, Şengün has been exceptional from a per minute basis as a rookie. 1.28 fantasy points per minute on FanDuel over the past 30 days. We're going to have him in somewhere in that range. And it is a little nerve-wracking given the matchup. You wouldn't expect that going into Cleveland, but Mobley and Allen as a two-headed monster can really cause some problems for Şengün, but he would still become a really nice value play. Would anything else stand out to you for Houston if Christian Wood is out? Because I assume we don't really have to approach Houston all that like with any sort of interest if Wood is in.
Armani Brooks, I think, looks somewhat interesting with or without Christian Wood, but probably a little bit more so if Wood's out since there's more usage. But no Eric Gordon and no Porter. It should help to solidify his minutes. He only played about 22 minutes last game. He was injured in the second quarter, went to the locker room, so he lost like 6 minutes there. He wasn't expected to come back into the game. Then he did. He played 10 minutes in the third, didn't play at all in the fourth. But with both of those guys out, I would expect a lot of run from Armani Brooks. I think Jayshawn Tate at 5,800 looks pretty good on DraftKings. Should be a little bit more involved without Gordon out there, but still a pretty tough spot.
Armani Brooks, by
also,
the way,
if Wood is out,
4,800 on FanDuel.
Oh, sorry.
Armani Brooks is 4,800 on FanDuel, so even better than that DraftKings price.
Yeah. Also, if Wood is out, Kenyon Martin Jr. probably looks pretty good. He played 27 minutes off the bench last game. A lot of that was because the second unit just played essentially the entire fourth quarter. But thinking about what Houston's been doing with their starting lineup, I think it's likely that with Gordon out, if we assume Wood's in, I think it's likely that you get Brooks, Matthews, Tate, Tice, and Wood. Alternatively, you could get DJ Augustine in place of Tice. I don't know which one they would go with there, but if Wood is out, I think it really opens up front court minutes for Martin.
Okay, I like it. Anything else here for Houston?
No.
On the Cleveland side, lots to like here. Again, everybody appears to be available in this one. We've got Darius Garland, 10% owned on both sites. Jared Allen, close to 10% on both sites. Evan Mobley is questionable right now, and I think that's reflected in the ownership because he should be more than 6% or 8% given his current salaries and eligibilities. We've got Lauri Markkanen, 15 to 20%, depending on the site. That one we could probably dig into a little bit because that scares me. Ricky Rubio is 15% owned on DraftKings. And then Kevin Love projected for 21% ownership on DK, which I assume is because of the Evan Mobley questionable tag. But I don't know. I don't know how much we could actually pay attention to Cleveland ownership right now because it doesn't make a ton of sense.
I mean, $4,800 Love should be popular. I don't think he should be that popular.
11 game slate. It's going to be hard for him to be 21% owned.
Yeah.
Unless we assume Evan Mobley isn't playing.
Yeah. I mean, he was like 2% owned in basically the same spot last slate at 4,500. I think I played a decent amount of him there. He had a really big game, but like, he's the kind of guy where you're playing him at that price, because if he happens to get 22 minutes, he's likely to do really, really well. But if he's really popular, there's still risk there too. I mean, I think it was 2 games ago, he played like 14 minutes. So
right.
I think Love looks good. I think that ownership seems pretty high.
I think it has to be because of the Evan Mobley Q tag, but we can't also then have Evan Mobley 8% owned. Like it's got to be one or the other. Because Love will. Well, let's just say this. Let's say Evan Mobley doesn't play. How much does that impact Kevin Love? Because you could tell me not at all, and that would make sense to me.
I think it solidifies his minutes. Like, I don't think you necessarily get Love playing 30 minutes or something like that. But right. I think that it decreases the chances of you getting that game where Love plays like 14.
Right. I'm with you on that. So assuming Evan Mobley is in for right now, what do you like the most from Cleveland?
The whole team, kind of. I mean, it's a great spot against Houston. There is certainly the potential for Cleveland to just wipe the floor with them in this game, not to be competitive late, but the salaries here aren't expensive enough for me to really care about that. If Mobley plays, he looks good at 6,900. Markkanen at 5,100 looks good. If Mobley is out, Markkanen looks better. Love would look better. Ricky Rubio at 5K looks fine. You're likely to get 26 minutes or so from him. Jared Allen, 8,300 is reasonable. And then Garland's been fantastic without Colin Sexton. He's 7,900. If this game happens to be competitive, he's likely to give you 36 or 37 minutes. If it's not competitive, there's a pretty good chance that Garland is part of the reason why. So I think really there's 6 guys here on Cleveland that all look pretty good.
I'm with you. They all stand out most to me. Mobley is my favorite option if he is able to be in. 20% owned Lauri Markkanen is concerning me a bit on FanDuel because, like, I sort of understand why it's happening. He has not been good as of late. 0.78 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days. I feel like not only the public, but like even me, over projecting him a little bit. I don't really know what to do with Markkanen right now.
Yeah, I mean,
he looks good, clearly.
Like, you would expect his production to either take a hit or at least be less consistent when he's playing alongside Mobley and Allen because there's just less rebounds to go around. But I mean, overall this season, he's still at 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. If he's going to play 30 to 32 minutes against Houston, it's still going to project pretty well.
Yeah. Like I said, I have no issues with it, but that recent rate and run for him is concerning to me. I just don't know what I'm supposed to do with it.
I'm looking now to see how he's been with both of those guys in this season.
It's got to be bad.
He's played 18 games with Mobley and Jared Allen both active, 0.83 DraftKings points per minute in 30 and a half minutes per game.
That's not surprising to me. Usage rate?
Hang on, I just switched to something else. He's played 10 games without Sexton, and with those two, 0.78 DraftKings points per minute, 18.3% usage rate. If you ignore Sexton, because really that shouldn't make Markkanen worse, I don't think. 19% usage rate, 8.6% rebounding percentage, 6.8% assist percentage in the 18 games with Mobley and Allen.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I get it. I think he's a good play. Ownership is a little higher than I think it should be. Nothing crazy there, though. All right. Anything else for Cleveland?
Nope.
Right.
If Mobley sits, I think you could start taking shots at guys like Okoro and Chetty. It wouldn't be a priority, but there would be a lot of minutes available.
Okay. Does it become like a Dean Wade day?
I don't think it's ever a Dean Wade day. I think that he would potentially get minutes, but
yeah. Okay.
Like he would, there's a decent chance I think that he would start.
Did not play at all last game. So
it would be him or Chetty.
Yeah. Feels like it's more Chetty, but then again, Chetty played 6 minutes the last time out too, and they went to Lamar Stevens. So
it felt like it was more Chetty the last time. Was it Mobley or Markkanen, whoever? I think everybody on Cleveland's been out at some point this year, but there was already a stretch where it was like, oh, Chetty's going to start, and then they were like, nah, Dean Wade.
Yep. Who knows? Atlanta Hawks, 7.5 point favorites in Orlando. This is a standard issue rotation for Atlanta today. Only guys in double digits of ownership are Collins and Herter on FanDuel, where they're 7,400 and 4,700 respectively. I completely agree with those ownership marks. To me, no priorities from Atlanta. Happy to get any individual pieces, and you can still get to Cam Reddish at a sub 4K price tag while you can.
Yeah, agreed with that. It's a really good spot for Atlanta. This should be a fast-paced game. Orlando doesn't play well defensively, but you do also have Atlanta pretty fairly priced to where there's still a ceiling for these guys, particularly Young, Capella, and Collins. We know that Young certainly capable of going for 50. Capella can get up there as well. Collins is 8K and likely to play 34 minutes or so in a good matchup. But on an 11-game slate where we're going to have no shortage of value since half the league is in health and safety protocols, it's going to just be difficult for any of these guys to stand out as top options. And that's why the ownership is where it is.
Yeah, I wish I had more that I could add here. Reddish seems to only be that flyer. Got the 28 minutes here. Looks like I don't want to say that they're like ramping Gallo up, but this stretch of like the past 10 to 14 days, taking him from that like 22 range to 26 pretty regularly. Anxious to see where that actually ends up for him down the line.
Yeah, I mean, last game there was foul issues for Collins as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to suddenly be playing 30 minutes or more, but I was starting to think that Gallo was only like capable of playing 22 minutes regularly, and doesn't appear to be the case any longer. I just don't have much else that I could say for Atlanta. These guys are just sort of priced appropriately now.
Yeah.
On the Orlando side, Cole Anthony is 8% owned. I'm anxious to get your thoughts there because I think he stands out. Wendell Carter Jr., 7K on FanDuel, 7,500 on DraftKings. Not pulling all that much ownership, 12% on FanDuel, which I think makes some sense. Terrence Ross's minutes have been up over the past couple games. What do you like most from Orlando? I think they're a really weird team today.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to what I like most is pretty much always going to be Cole Anthony. I think the 8% ownership on DraftKings makes sense in the sense that, again, there's a ton of value on other teams. So when you're talking about a team like Orlando that is more or less healthy, it's going to be really difficult for someone to stand out as a top play unless they're just egregiously mispriced, which I don't think Anthony is at 8,400. But at the same time, it's still he works very well as a lower owned high upside piece as part of a tournament lineup because it's just a really good player. He's playing a ton of minutes in competitive games. The salary is still reasonable. So I view him and Wendell Carter Jr. the same way there, where they're not priorities for me compared to other options on the slate, but they do both look like pretty good options. Franz Wagner's salaries come up a bit to 6,300, where I'm not that excited to get there. Same for Ross at 4,100. If Bamba were to sit, Carter looks even better.
What are you reading into for these minutes for Terrence Ross as of late? 35 3 games ago, 26 2 games ago, 33 in his most recent outing.
It's kind of tough because like he closed last game, but Mo Bamba played a total of 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So like I think it's good. I think it's a positive in the sense that Orlando is willing to play him that many minutes. I don't think you should necessarily be going in and saying, oh, Terrence Ross, like this is his new role or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think they might slowly be ramping him up for the old trade deadline.
Yeah. If Bamba's out, I think it's potentially a bump for Ross, just in the sense that you would probably get Robin Lopez starting if Bamba's out, but Lopez is less likely to close than Bamba would be.
And there was a quote from Jamal Mosley. Is he the coach of Orlando? I think so.
I have no idea.
Either way, I'm almost positive it's Mosley. There was a quote saying that he expects Bamba to play today. So moving forward like that. Anything else for Orlando?
No.
All righty. Schedule for the rest of the day coming up at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So in an hour from now, NFL Strategy Show Ownership Edition. We've got the Jock Market NBA show coming up at 1. We've got the No House Advantage NFL show coming up at 4 p.m. NBA Deeper Dive. That's going to be you and I again, Adam. We're running it back for another hour and 15 minutes later today. I swapped with the boss man for tomorrow. And then 6 p.m. NBA Live Before Lock, taking you all the way up till 7. We also have free NBA ownership projections and free NHL ownership projections. So go to awesemo.com, browse directly to both of those. You'll be able to see them free all day. 9 more games to go here. Miami at Philly is the next one. Miami 5.5-point dogs in Philadelphia. This one is very difficult to talk about right now. So Miami, as we know, no Jimmy Butler, no Bam Adebayo, no Markieff Morris, no Caleb Martin. Questionable tag as well on Tyler Hero. Not fun. For Philly, Q tag on Embiid and Curry. Clearly no Ben Simmons, but that's not much of a surprise. So let's start on the Miami side. Aggressive chalk for Kyle Lowry on FanDuel and bit of ownership on DraftKings, but Lowry 7K on FanDuel. I think he looks really good. Don't really know how much I want 31%, but he's clearly a fantastic play and very much in a cash game build if you're playing on FanDuel today. I just don't know what we do with Tyler Hero because if he's in, he's only 6,200 shooting guard small forward on FanDuel and has to look incredible.
Yeah, like he only played 25 minutes last game, but the low ownership, and again, I don't know if maybe this is impacted by the Q tag. We have him at 1% on DraftKings right now. On the one hand, I get it that there's other options you're going to go to, but if he's low owned, I think it's a really appealing spot in tournaments, even at 7,400 on DraftKings. So just try and get that bounce back game. He's disappointed a bit in these games without Bam and without Butler, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the opportunities are still there. He's got about a 30% usage rate without those guys on the floor. If he's playing well, there's no real doubt that he's in the closing lineup. It's easy for someone else to be in there over him when he's playing horribly or if he's banged up. But if he's healthy and playing well, you can still get 32, 33 minutes from him. So I would really like him in tournaments if the ownership is low.
What are your thoughts on Lowry here? I don't know if it's just, I can't tell if I'm just projecting him poorly, which I don't think that I am, but I don't get to that same sort of ownership rate that the public is getting to right now. Even at that 7K price tag on FanDuel. Like I've got Lowry as just over a fantasy point per minute in this spot. It's a terrible matchup in general. I mean, we're talking about a Miami team that's 29th in pace, a Philly team that's 28th in pace. Like, I don't know how much I want to get. Now, if Hero is out, I think Lowry is going to actually finally get that usage bump that he doesn't really seem to see with the no Bam, no Butler group. But I don't really like Lowry for 30% of my lineups on an 11 gamer if Tyler Hero is in.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. It's not that it doesn't even for me have anything to do with Lowry. It has to do with the price point, not meaning that he's overpriced or anything. Just that when you even talking 7K on FanDuel, 8K on DraftKings, there's always a million guys around there that even if Lowry looks a point or a point and a half better, that give you the same range of outcomes. And so it's just really difficult to be jamming in guys in that price range that are popular, unless it's some, just extenuating circumstance like, they are underpriced at like normal. Like if Lowry were normally 9K and then now he was like 7K with Butler being out, then yeah, okay, what are you going to do about it? But when he's kind of just still priced close to correctly, like you said, he's 1.02 FanDuel points per minute without Butler and Bam this year. He's likely to give you 37 or 38 minutes, but it's not like he's projecting for some otherworldly score that you can't find a similar projection at lower ownership elsewhere.
Two guys are $500 more expensive than him today that I have either projected the same or slightly better. Darius Garland is 7,500. He's projected for 10% ownership. We've got Lowry at 30. Malcolm Brogdon is 7,500. I have projected slightly better than Kyle Lowry. He's projected for 15% ownership. Just right away, just looking at those two guys in a GPP, I'd rather have Brogdon or Garland because I'm getting a discount.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, for example, Garland, like you would go Lowry over Garland in cash because like, for one, he projects a little bit better, but two, the minutes are more secure. You know, there's plenty of risk that Garland isn't even on the floor in the fourth quarter. But in tournaments, who really cares? You know, you're going to lose tournaments most days regardless. You need to be putting yourself in the position to win some of them. So, you know, Garland, if this game's competitive and he does play 4 quarters, Garland is in a great spot. He's going to beat Lowry a pretty high percentage of the time. Same goes for Brogdon going up against a Giannis-less Bucks team, playing huge minutes, assuming that game's close. So I'm with you. It's just, you know, Lowry looks good. I'm not trying to talk anyone off of him and say that there's anything wrong there, but there's just comparable plays. And I think right now it looks like a situation where, and we've seen it a lot this year, you know, as people get better about using projections and building lineups that project well, they still haven't gotten to the point really where they've figured out how to like engage with the field and counter things the field's doing. So you've seen some spots where it's just like, oh yeah, this guy projected a point higher, so he's getting 3 times the ownership as guys that are essentially the same play.
That makes me feel better because I felt like I was just staring at something really wrong and I didn't know how to change it. So I feel pretty good here. Do you expect PJ Tucker to be the 7th highest scorer on the slate today?
I do not, but I will say that he actually has, like, his rates have been good with Butler and Bam off. I had kind of joked about it on Twitter when he was going off last game, but I wasn't really sure how many minutes to give him. And so I'd given him like 32 for that game. And part of the reason I landed there was like, if I went higher, I was going to end up getting a lot of PJ Tucker, which now obviously I wish I had. But his rebounding rate has been up. He's averaged 0.88 DraftKings points per minute without them on the floor now. Obviously, that's skewed a little bit by the last game, but 12.9% usage rate, still obviously close to non-existent, but that's still several points higher than normal for Tucker. 11.5% rebounding percentage, 13.8% assist percentage. He's gone from being someone that doesn't do anything at all to someone that does a little bit of everything.
Yeah, 0.81 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days. Then again, I'd rather just be wrong than play $5,900 PJ Tucker today on FanDuel.
Right. Like, this is still kind of a moot conversation because he's up to 5,300 on DraftKings.
Yeah. This happens every year. I talked about it a little bit on the strategy show this morning, or on the process show this morning, where it's like you get this stretch of PJ Tucker where he becomes like $5,200 PJ Tucker and he'll get played a bit. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, he's back down to 3,900. And you're just like,
this has happened before? I don't even remember.
Oh, a lot.
Oh, when he was playing like center for the Rockets.
It's always, every single year, he has a stretch where he gets priced into the 5s. It's craziness.
I guess I just like mentally block him out.
Well, because you don't ever play him when he does that.
Right.
Like, he's fully off the table. Yeah. So like if I pull up PJ Tucker on, I'm going to pull up his FanDuel or his Fantasy Cruncher profile so I can sort by salaries. But like, even last year, I think it was like February 2020, he was like 5,900 or something like that. You run into it a lot. Now, I assume it's all just, generally speaking, injury based. He's not playing his way into like a new talent level. We know exactly what he is. Now, come on, FC. I closed this already. Close this crunch. All right. So PJ Tucker was 6,200 on February 6th of 2020, 5,800 on November 19th. He was 5,600 back in 2016, but he's got like, I don't know, 25, 30 games of 5K or above since 2016.
Should have been a good sign that the world was about to come crashing down when PJ Tucker hit 6,200 in February 2020.
Absolutely. Let's go to the Philly side where there's nothing we could really talk about here. If Joel Embiid plays, I like him for 10-5 on FanDuel and 11K on DraftKings. If he doesn't play, feel free to play all of the Andre Drummond you can get to at 4,700 on DK. That is, he'll be the best play of the day or somewhere around that. That's for sure. If Seth Curry doesn't play, you're probably just jamming in a little bit more Korkmaz or Milton, depending on who gets named the starter in that one. I don't really like much of Philly if these guys are in, though.
No, me neither. Embiid looks okay, but still an 11K center. Just always kind of tough to get there. Harris looks fine at 7,400. I guess Harris gets a little bit of a bump because there's always the chance that Embiid just gets ruled out at 710. But in all seriousness, if everybody's in, I don't really see much of anything here.
All right, we're on the same page. And I assume you don't have anything else to add. If Embiid is out and you get the time to do it, Drummond is incredible.
For sure.
Drummond, here's how incredible Drummond is. He's 6,100 on FanDuel and is still a really good play then if Embiid is out. So 4,700 on DraftKings is a game changer. Los Angeles Lakers, 2-point dogs in Dallas, no Luka. I'm going to go ahead and double check that is still the line because I didn't believe it the first time that I saw it. Makes me think that Anthony Davis isn't playing, but we'll see. All right, it's a 1-point line now for Dallas, but either way. We'll start on the Lakers side. LeBron,
Wait. Did you just say you think AD's not playing because this game's only a 1-point spread?
There's no Luka on the Dallas side. If AD, LeBron, and Russell Westbrook are healthy, I'm very surprised to see Dallas be a favorite.
I'm not.
I think the Lakers suck. And obviously they are now missing Talen Horton-Tucker and Dwight Howard and probably like a bunch of additional dudes that I'm forgetting right off the top of my head now. Clearly no Ariza. Malik Monk is out. We still have no Nunn, but LeBron, AD, if LeBron and AD are healthy and Luka is not, I have a hard time believing that team can be the favorite. I like the Lakers.
This game's in Dallas. If Luka's playing, Dallas is like a 5-point favorite.
Yeah, but he's Luka, man. He's not playing. They're bad.
So are the Lakers.
Oh, I agree. But we're talking about a Dallas team that's got a negative 1-point differential with Luka involved. The Lakers are a 0.5 point behind that. Like, these teams are pretty equal, and one of them's missing the clear best player on their team. I was surprised to see that line. I think we're going to end up seeing AD out, but that's neither here nor there. If all three of these guys are in, do you want any of them?
Not really. AD would look fine. $10,400. He's been the best producer of the three when they're all active anyway, and he's the cheapest. So I would go there. It would be really difficult for me to get to LeBron or Russ.
Yeah, same page here. LeBron is really difficult to get to on FanDuel. LeBron is 11.2 on FanDuel. AD is 10K. Russ is 9,200. To me, LeBron is the last guy you want to get to on the FanDuel side. It's easier on DraftKings, but it's AD or nobody here.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I see it. Like, look, you're never wrong for getting to LeBron, but
yeah,
it's also difficult to, like, on DraftKings, he's only power forward eligible, so it's not like you get a lot of flexibility there. And he's $100 more than Joel Embiid. So, and that's just one name that we've already talked about that's similarly priced. So, if I'm not getting to Davis, LeBron would be second, but it's just pretty tough to get there. Melo at 4,200, I guess you could take some shots on since they are shorthanded, but
they're missing 3 guys for COVID protocols plus 2 guys for injuries, and they still can't make a value play show up today.
Like, I think Melo is where I would look.
Yeah.
But there's just a good chance that you're getting, Avery Bradley's going to play decent minutes. You're going to get more from Austin Reeves. You're going to get more from Wayne Ellington. It's just not going to matter.
No, it isn't. A lot of guys that aren't very good. On the Dallas side, we're doing this one again, and we should. Jalen Brunson is 6,200 on FanDuel, 6,700 on DraftKings. One of the highest owned plays of the day, one of the best plays of the day. So fully in for Jalen Brunson. Porzingis is pulling about 10 to 15% ownership. I think that makes some sense. I don't have a ton of interest in it. Brunson is the main priority for me. I probably won't be getting to too much else from Dallas.
Yeah, Brunson, whenever Luka's out, looks like a good option. 6,700. So salary has come up. He's getting to that point where, kind of like we talked about with Lowry, Brunson still looks like a very strong option. He's greater than a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. without Luka on the floor. Even if you put Porzingis on the floor and take Luka off, Brunson still is really, really good. And he's likely to give you 32 to 34 minutes. But at 6,700, there's just going to be a lot of other similarly priced players that can do the same thing as Jalen Brunson. So him getting 33% ownership is fine. It makes sense. If he were getting less, then he would look really, really good. But at the same time, it's not a price point where I think you necessarily have to be jamming him in. Like when he was 5K or 5,300, whatever it was, the first game Luka missed, there was nothing really you could do other than play Jalen Brunson, because nobody at 5K is remotely close to a fantasy point per minute with the potential to play 36 minutes. At 6,700, those guys are pretty easy to find. So even though Brunson looks the best, you can start to look for lower owned guys around them.
Yep, we're on the same page there. Cash game, you're probably slotting him right in. I would assume he's showing up in most cash builds, at least as of right now. We'll see what that means by the time we get a little bit further down the line. Anything else here? Do you have any specific Porzingis thoughts?
Yeah, he's 8,600 and he's averaging like 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Luka. So I still think he looks really good here.
Okay. Anything else? Do you see anybody else falling into enough minutes to matter here?
Hardaway could, but on a slate this big, I don't think it's really worth mentioning. It's more of like, a 1% or 2% owned flyer that just gets into some lineups. The usage rate goes up because already coming off the bench, his usage rate goes up. But then now with Luka being out, he's getting some time where he's out there without Luka or Porzingis. So he'll get his shots. If he's playing well, he can get the 30 minutes, but he's also pretty much priced for this role.
All right. Let's keep it moving then. The Indiana Pacers taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. This one's going to get pretty ridiculous. Still a Q tag on Justin Holiday. Everything else is normal for the Pacers. So this one's a normal game for the Pacers for me. I'll happily have, 15% of Malcolm Brogdon. Domantas Sabonis is playable, but price is a little higher than I'd like it to be. Karis LeVert is 6K on FanDuel, playing monster minutes and getting ownership, and he should. Miles Turner is getting some ownership, and he should. I don't really want anybody else, although O'Shea Brissett for 3,500 on DraftKings works as a value play. It's the same old stuff for Indiana.
Yeah, on DraftKings, again, Indiana's just not really getting much ownership, and it makes them really, really appealing because on the one hand, it's tough because the production is spread out a bit between these guys. But on the other hand, in competitive games, they're still playing huge minutes. Against Golden State the other day, you got about 37 minutes from LeVert. You got 36.5 from Brogdon, 36.5 from Sabonis, 36 from Turner, which has become a regular thing, by the way, when he's not in foul trouble. You're getting 34 to 36 minutes. So this is a team that I think is really, really useful in tournaments from the sense that, there's guys that project a little bit better. For example, LeVert at 6,500 or Brunson at 6,700. If you're just giving me even money odds and I have to pick one, I'm taking Brunson every single time. But Brunson's getting 33% ownership. LeVert's getting 7. Same can be said, different positions, but Turner, 6,200, so a $500 discount. Malcolm Brogdon at 7,700, only 12% ownership for someone that averages over a fantasy point per minute and is likely to play around 37 minutes in this game. Sabonis at 9,500 looks fine at 5% owned. So there's, for every guy from Indiana you mentioned, I think there's at least one player in their price range or at their position that looks better, but they all look really good just from an upside standpoint. And so I do really like the idea of getting to this team in tournaments.
We are on the same page here. And it certainly feels good to get to a little bit more Indiana because it's a slightly better matchup. Let's get to Milwaukee. No Giannis Antetokounmpo into the health and safety protocols. But that's not all. Clearly, we still have no Brook Lopez. Dante DiVincenzo was slowly but surely getting set to come back. He's in health and safety protocols. George Hill is back. Wesley Matthews is out for COVID. Semi is still out. DeMarcus Cousins is out just for this game. And the biggest piece of it all, Chris Middleton is questionable. And I don't know if he's going to play. He hyperextended his knee. Seems a little aggressive. What I do know is this. Whether or not Chris Middleton plays, Drew Holiday looks exceptional with no Giannis on the floor. He's 7,500 on DraftKings, which is a not correct price for this situation. Chris Middleton with no Giannis on the floor is going to look really, really good at 7,500 on FanDuel, 7,200 on DraftKings. Bobby Portis's price is a little bit higher than you want it to be, but with no Giannis, still looks really good. Pat Connaughton becomes sort of interesting on DraftKings as a value option. Grayson Allen is only 4K, looks nice as a value option. Lots to like here for Milwaukee. And that's even with Chris Middleton in
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you just take Giannis off the floor this year, Holiday's played 258 minutes, 1.22 DraftKings points per minute. That's not accounting for Chris Middleton at all. So a lot of those minutes had Middleton out there. If Middleton's not out there, you get even more work for Holiday. Middleton's at 1.28 DraftKings points per minute with a 35% usage rate. Portis is at 1.17 DraftKings points per minute. You don't have Giannis, but you also don't have Cousins. You don't have Semi. Like, you can get an easy 32 to 34 minutes from Bobby Portis here. You mentioned Connaughton at 5K, looks fine, should play a lot of minutes. He's at 0.82 DraftKings points per minute without Giannis on the floor. Grayson Allen at 4K, 0.72 DraftKings points per minute without Giannis. But this team being shorthanded makes it likely that you get 32 to 34 minutes from Allen. So he looks good. There's a lot to get to here, even if Middleton is in. If Middleton's out, then you just start looking to guys like Hood, which, is never that appealing. Jordan Nwora, potentially. He hasn't really been in the rotation, but earlier in the year, we saw, him when the Bucks were shorthanded, we saw them go to him because he can provide some offensive firepower that a lot of these other backups aren't going to bring. So there would at least be the potential for him to do well. But you can feel pretty confident in any of Holiday, Portis, Allen, Connaughton, Middleton if he plays.
Flat 3K George Hill.
Yeah, I think that one's interesting because he hasn't played in the last couple of games, but he was playing like 26, 27 minutes. He's not a great fantasy producer, but especially if you take Middleton out, they're going to need just anyone that can do things offensively. And he'll, he can knock down threes. He can handle the ball. So I think that as long as there aren't health issues with Hill, it's likely that you would get 26 minutes or so at 3K flat.
All right. I don't have anything else to add here other than Milwaukee looking real good with no Giannis.
Yeah, and I mean the ownership is there, but it should be like this is a situation where the prices haven't adjusted whatsoever for Giannis being out.
Right. PrizePicks, the presenting sponsor of this show. Guys, if you are interested in signing up at PrizePicks, you could use the promo code Awesemo. You'll get a $100 first match deposit bonus and 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You'll receive an email within 24 to 48 hours after you redeem your free month. There's no sharks, optimizers, mass entries. You can make a 5-player, basically a parlay card that can net you up to 10x your entry fee. You can download the app in the App Store, Google Play, or on PrizePicks.com. You could also use our free player props tools to help you make the best selections possible. I've got it pulled up right now so that I can give Adam a couple shots at trying to pick some PrizePicks prize props here. Let's see if I can. Is this actually going to scrape for me today, unlike it did last time? Nope, certainly isn't. So I'm going to hit you with, let's see, what game should we go to? This one works for me. Kristaps Porzingis over under 42 fantasy points for today. That's FanDuel scoring, by the way.
Yeah. I think it's close. I will take the over.
Okay. I would lean under, actually. This is another one where I will lean under, though. LeBron James, 50 fantasy points.
Under.
Yeah, you and me both.
I think that's over if Davis sits.
I agree. But I would take a pretty firm under on LeBron there. One final one.
Wait, I thought you thought Davis was sitting, though.
I'm leaning that direction based on looking at that line. I do have AD in. I know that makes no sense whatsoever, but
so really though, no, I mean, what I'm saying is like, if you were actually playing this, you probably wouldn't take that because you think there's a good chance Davis sits. Like you would just choose something else.
I would wait till the end of the day to see what they actually move these things to.
Yeah.
Final one, Kyle Lowry, 37 fantasy points.
Kyle Lowry, 37. Seems close to right, but I'd take the over.
I have him at 37.1, so I'm going to go ahead and just walk away from that one.
Yeah.
But that's PrizePicks, folks. Make sure you're using that promo code Awesemo. You don't want to leave any money on the table. $100 on your first deposit. We're on to just a real garbage game. The New Orleans Pelicans at the Oklahoma City Thunder. Pels, 1.5-point favorites in OKC. We've got Josh Hart and Joe Val, about 17% owned on FanDuel, where they are 5,900 and 7,600 respectively. Nobody over 7% owned on DraftKings. Are you prioritizing anything from the New Orleans Pelicans today?
I think that there's a lot to like just because the matchup is pretty appealing. OKC, not a very good team. New Orleans, a terrible team as well. But the salaries are the issue. Valanciunas, 8,700, has a high ceiling for sure, but also, expensive. Same goes for Ingram at 9,200. Even Devontae Graham and Nickeil Alexander-Walker have been priced up a little bit here. One spot, I guess, worth mentioning is Hernan Gomez at 4,200, playing the backup center minutes to Valanciunas. Typically, he's going to get like 16 minutes and, not be that useful. But if anything happens, whether it's a blowout, whether it's foul trouble for Valanciunas, it's not going to take much for Hernan Gomez to be a very good value option at virtually no ownership. He's been excellent from a fantasy standpoint this year. He's averaged 1.4 DraftKings points per minute over 215 minutes. So certainly not someone that you want your entire night revolving around, but he produces better. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I feel pretty safe saying he's the best per minute fantasy producer at his salary on the entire slate.
All right. I hate this Pelicans team right now.
It feels like they should be better than they are. Like, not good, just better than they are.
They've been playing better as of late. They've been on a bit of a run. You just double check it, make sure I'm not talking out of my ass like I normally do. I mean, they have the 27th best net rating. Over the last 2 weeks, it's been 20th. So yeah, that's a 5-point improvement. They're not basically dead last and everything any longer.
Yeah, that's closer to where like they should be.
Yeah. And, it doesn't help when you have an all NBA level talent not on the floor for the entire season. I mean, He might actually be on the floor, but he's like a couple rows deep. It's a wide gentleman at this point. And then we go to Oklahoma City. Now, this is interesting. So Lou Dort is out for OKC. We're going to start there because that's an actual piece of information. Here is the other piece of information that is very, very interesting to me. And I didn't know that this was the case until we started looking into it. Teo Maledon, Poku, and Isaiah Roby are all on assignment with the G League. Now, why that is interesting to me is that Teo Maledon played 12 minutes 3 days ago for Oklahoma City. Poku played 24 minutes 3 days ago for Oklahoma City. So those two guys don't appear to be with the team. And the Oklahoma City Blue play today, this afternoon, which I don't know if they can double it up and play for and then make it to the game. They're both in Oklahoma. So I don't know how that works, but they are with that team and the Oklahoma City Blue play today.
Yeah. I'll say, I don't know if you're even allowed to play 2 games.
I'm almost positive you can, and I think that someone did it earlier this year. Okay.
I was going to say either way, make sure that is one thing to keep an eye on injury report wise that will seem like it does not matter at all. Might not even get reported by any of the notifications, but just keep an eye on it because we have certainly seen teams this year go from they're out on assignment to they're in. So and it matters just because if you take all of those bodies out, it solidifies minutes for Kenrich Williams. It solidifies minutes for Trey Mann. Normally, when you talk about Oklahoma City, you can make educated guesses at who's going to get minutes, but it's really tough because they're a shitty team with a bunch of guys that all suck equally and they can kind of just do whatever they want. If you take those guys out of the rotation, you're just lessening the options. You're increasing your chances of being right at what you guess at. So whereas I think Trey Mann would look good with Lou Dort out, even if those guys are available, I'm even more confident when I know that those minutes can't go to Teo Maledon.
Yeah. I don't know where these minutes are going right now. We've got Josh Giddey 27% owned on FanDuel. That's perpetually what he is. It's too much for me in this moment. It's whatever. We've got Kenrich Williams at 25% owned at 3,500 on DraftKings. I think that makes some sense. I'm not excited to get to him at 25% ownership until I see some sort of starting lineup, but he does seem like he's the first guy to benefit. I'm not surprised by it, but I need it confirmed because he could just as easily still play 24 minutes and they go to more garbage. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Trey Mann is projected for 23% ownership at 3,200. I don't know what to do with that because he does not have to play those minutes.
And he also doesn't have to play well. One thing with Trey Mann to keep in mind, so I think he's a good value, good point per dollar value. I think it's likely he plays a good amount of minutes. He's been firmly in the rotation recently. He only played 14 minutes last game, but he was he was one of the first guys off the bench. He recently has picked up some extra minutes as well. But one thing to keep in mind with him is he has been virtually non-existent when he plays alongside Gilgeous-Alexander this year. And so it's a case where you're assuming if this game's close, Gilgeous-Alexander plays something like 36 minutes. Trey Mann has a 15% usage rate, a 5% assist percentage, and has averaged 0.56 DraftKings points per minute in 123 minutes alongside Gilgeous-Alexander this year. So if Gilgeous-Alexander is playing 36 minutes, the most you can get from Trey Mann where he's not putting up those awful numbers is 12 minutes. You can then, let's say he plays 28. Cool. You just picked up an extra 12, or 14 fantasy points. That obviously is useful, but that's also giving him a ton of minutes, So it's, let's say he plays 28 minutes for the game. That would mean that he's probably playing about 12 minutes without SGA and he's playing 16 with him. So 16 of those 28 minutes, you're expecting to account for 8 or 9 fantasy points.
And I don't even know if he plays that much.
Right. Neither do I. But like what I'm saying is it's not just a case of if Trey Mann gets the minutes, he's going to ball out. He has been a ghost when he plays with SGA.
If he's not starting and he's pulling 20% ownership, I don't think that's a very interesting play at all.
Right.
I don't see him starting at all.
Could it work? Sure. But it's not going to work often enough to be worth that level of ownership.
Kenrich Williams, on the other hand, I think looks a lot better than Trey Mann does.
Yeah, Williams is nice because he's someone that you can slot in. You can give him more minutes with the starters, and he's still going to produce because he's not a high usage guy anyway. He just, he gets some assists, he rebounds. He's similar from a DFS standpoint to someone like PJ Tucker, just in that this iteration of PJ Tucker, where he's not going to do any one thing really well, but he's going to grab some boards. He's going to score a little bit. He's going to get a few assists, and at a dirt cheap salary, if he pushes 30 minutes, he's just going to look good. He's played 212 minutes with Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor this year. He's averaged 0.74 DraftKings points per minute at 3,500. If he gets 30 minutes or so, he's going to look like a good option.
What do you want to do with the rest of this team? I don't find really anybody else specifically interesting, but happy to get to SGA, to Giddey. I'm not happy to get to Baisley or Jeremiah Robinson Earl, but I will play those guys.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm never upset with getting to Gilgeous-Alexander or Giddey. I also don't really think they stand out. I mean, for example, Giddey is the same price as Jalen Brunson. So at best, it just kind of forces him into being a tournament flyer. Gilgeous-Alexander, when you start considering he's more expensive than guys like Drew Holiday and Middleton if he plays, and Lowry and everything, it becomes difficult to prioritize him. Baisley probably plays 32 minutes or so. He's 4,600, so he looks fine. He's also terrible at basketball, but he's not that bad from a fantasy standpoint. 0.85 DraftKings points per minute with SGA this year. So pretty interesting team where I don't feel confident in a lot, but I do think that I'll end up getting the pieces here because there's going to be value. It's just a matter of comparing their chances of success to what the field is projected to do.
All righty. Anything else here for OKC?
I wanted to mention Ty Jerome as the man pivot, but I don't think I can get there on a slate this big.
I mean, you're not wrong that he is, but
if Ty Jerome starts, Ty Jerome looks good.
Yeah, that works. Charlotte Hornets at the San Antonio Spurs. Hornets are 3-point dogs, 228 total. For the Hornets, we're starting to get some people back. Mason Plumlee is questionable. Jalen McDaniels is in. We still don't have Ish. We still don't have LaMelo Ball. So slowly but surely getting back to normal for Charlotte. Only guy pulling any ownership right now, at least on FanDuel, is 13% owned Cody Martin. I've been playing a ton of Cody Martin as of late. I don't agree with that ownership at all on Martin now. Nobody higher than 7% Rozier on DraftKings. To me, there are no priorities. I'm still happy to get to any of the guys that I am confident are going to play 30 or more minutes, but nothing that I want to get to aggressively.
Yeah, we've just reached the situation with the Hornets where the salaries came up because they were shorthanded and they were all playing 40 minutes a night. And then now they're starting to get guys back. And while LaMelo's still out, so there's plenty of production to go around. You're just looking at a bunch of guys that average around the fantasy point per minute. Oubrey's at 107, Hayward's at 0.96, Martin's at 0.87, Bridges at 1.01. Washington at 0.97, Rozier at 0.96, all those guys without LaMelo this year. So it's not like you have any one guy that you're like that you're expecting to go out and get 1.2 or 1.3 fantasy points per minute. You're still banking on them to get there really just based on how many minutes they play. And so with these bodies coming back and the salaries elevating, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. Last game, Terry Rozier was the only starter who played like normal minutes in a blowout. He played 33 minutes. Bridges looked like he was on his way to 36 or 37. Hayward was on his way to 36 or 37 most likely, but that's good, but it's still several minutes less than basically their price to play.
I don't have anything else to add here. Keep your eye on the Mason Plumlee news. That matters. I don't know if it really matters from like you're going to play Mason Plumlee or like Nick Richards or something like that, but it matters for PJ Washington. That's for sure.
Does it?
I mean, I'd rather have no Mason Plumlee for PJ Washington than have him in.
Yeah, that's true. I was just thinking that Washington would, like, you could get 20 minutes for Plumlee, 28 for Washington, but yeah, I mean, you're right. That definitely more beneficial for him if he's out. Also, Washington started the second half last game, so there's always the chance that he would just completely replace Richards.
Yeah, I gave Richards like 6 minutes. They were playing him that like stupid, basically no rotation before. I'm gonna assume that they're going back to that again. For San Antonio, just normal San Antonio stuff, I guess. We've got the only thing that we need to know is Josh Primo is back with their G League affiliate. Last time out for San Antonio, we saw Thad Young not be a part of the rotation. We got Keldon Johnson back finally. So Keita Bates-Diop also not a part of the rotation. Bryn Forbes also didn't play. DeJounte Murray, Jakob Poeltl, and Keldon Johnson are all 10 to 15% owned on FanDuel. No one is higher owned than Jakob Poeltl at 8% on DraftKings. Do you like anything for San Antonio?
I want to, because this is kind of a cheat code matchup against Charlotte, but
yeah,
the pricing's pretty aggressive. I think that in tournaments, Murray is fine at 10-3. Jakob Poeltl is fine at 7K. Even Derek White at 7,200. Given the way he's played lately, like he's just playing better. He's shooting more. He's producing at a higher level. He's playing a bunch of minutes, but that salary is also adjusted pretty quickly. So they're all pretty difficult to get to. I mean, you can throw Keldon Johnson into that group as well. He's likely to give you 32 minutes or so at 5,600. It's a spot where he can just absolutely smash Charlotte because it's a terrible defensive team that plays at a really fast pace. But certainly one of these teams where they're best used as just contrarian one-off type pieces. I don't think you're building around any of these guys.
I agree. Thought I would. FanDuel's a little bit different. Like Murray's $1,000 cheaper. Keldon Johnson's still only 5,300, gets 2 eligibility. So there's some stuff there on FanDuel, but DraftKings is a little tougher. Let's go to Minnesota. The Timberwolves are 4.5-point dogs in Denver, 217 total. And for Minnesota, Q tag on D'Angelo Russell. He played their most recent game, so I'm assuming he is in. Anthony Edwards is 14% owned on FanDuel, where he's 7,200, $1,100 more expensive on DraftKings. Jared Vanderbilt is 5,600 on FanDuel, 10% owned. Otherwise, there's not really any ownership coming into this team, and probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, a pretty brutal matchup for them. The pricing's not great. You're going up against a slow-paced Denver team in Denver. Towns is always fine. If you can get to Russell or Edwards, it's fine. But I mean, we're kind of at a point now where, like, when you talk about guys like Russell and Edwards, we've already talked about like the clear priorities in guys like Jalen Brunson and Holiday and potentially Middleton. Then we've talked about the guys that are similarly priced that are getting less ownership, like Brogdon and LeVert, and all those guys are cheaper than Russell and Edwards. So it just makes it really, really difficult.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Again, just to be specific, Edwards at 8,300 on DraftKings, tough. 7,200 on FanDuel, shooting guard, small forward, significantly less tough to get to.
One thing that is kind of interesting on DraftKings, Pat Beverly's 4,900. He did play 34.3 minutes last game. He's been productive overall this year. So I think that is a decent value spot.
I agree. On the Denver side, Denver. I feel so bad for this team every day. So Will Barton, probable. Aaron Gordon, probable. No Jermichael Green. He is hurt. Austin Rivers is questionable. We can dig into that one if we need to. Nikola Jokic, 24% owned on FanDuel at 11.5, 22% owned on DraftKings at 12.2. Look, I like him a lot, and he's clearly the highest projected guy on this slate, and it's not even really all that close. I got him at 1.75 FanDuel points per minute today, but I don't know if he's like my like a giant priority for me. He just looks really good.
The issue with getting to Jokic, I think, is that at least so far, and this is very subject to change as the day goes on, but we haven't had a lot of like 3 to 4K guys that we really, really like. We've had a lot of mid-range guys that look fantastic. And on slates like that, it can be kind of difficult to pay all the way up because Jokic is clearly the number one guy tonight. Yeah. Like anytime he plays, it's safe to say he's the number one guy. Tonight's no exception. But let's say Jokic gets you 60 DraftKings points. Obviously, that's very, it's good. It's a lot of points, but there's just such a good chance when you have a strong mid-range like this, there's a good chance that Porzingis goes for 50 or Brunson goes for 45 or Drew or Middleton go for 50. And that it kind of washes out Jokic unless you're able to pair them with Jokic. But in order to do that, you need to have good cheap value. So I'm not really sure yet where that good cheap value is coming from. But if I can get to Jokic, I would love to. I think he's very clearly the number one guy on the slate in terms of projection. I do typically just get to a lot of him naturally, but this slate is kind of weird in that we have a lot of very good mid-range value and not as much low-end value.
We're on the same page there. Any Jokic lineup I end up with is fine, but if he's already in a quarter of the lineups, I'm just going to hope that he doesn't go for 80.
Which, I mean, is
certainly on the table.
Yeah. Like, I still think, I'll have a better idea when we do the deeper dive later, but I still think there's a pretty good chance I end up just finding ways to get Jokic in because he's clearly the top projected guy, but at least kind of trying to think through how it fails and why he's not just basically a lock button type play like he is on a lot of slates. It's that the mid-range is so strong.
Yeah, I just look at like, at least from a FanDuel perspective, if Embiid plays, I can't have these guys be 23-1 in ownership. Like, not that I think Embiid's ownership is going to stay at 1, but there's going to be a giant gap between those two. If AD plays, we're going to have a giant gap in ownership between those guys. We're just talking about guys that have relatively similar statistics. Like, I understand Jokic is on a different level now, for sure, but he's also saving $1,000 or $1,500. We're not talking about guys that are in like next to each other in price either.
These guys are those guys produce at relatively the same level, the same way that like Kenrich Williams produces at relatively the same level as Kyle Lowry.
You're right. The price helps.
Yeah, the price makes a difference. And Davis can go for 70. Embiid can go for 70. Jokic is going to project for like 70, but or close to it. But they're not on the same level. But there is a price difference, and there is at least they can beat Jokic's projection. There's not many guys on this slate that can even beat Jokic's projection.
Right. That's sort of where I'm trying to go with that. Especially when Jokic is already getting the ownership. That's when it starts to become more interesting. Like if he's 10% owned, I'm not even having this conversation.
Right.
24 is a lot on FanDuel when you only get one.
For me, it's not even if I get away from Jokic, I don't think it's for Embiid, Davis, anything like that. I think it just is that I end up going more balanced. Like on DraftKings, if you put Jokic in, you have $5,400 remaining per player. Let's say, obviously we want to build around like Drew at 7,500. Now we're down to 5K. Throw Brunson in there and we're at 4,700. You're just starting to get to where a lot of your lineup is going to be made up of like shitty players that I don't really want to play. That would be what, if I end up not having a lot of Jokic, that would be what keeps me away. I do also think this is the kind of situation though, where, people always make the comment about all you need to do to win at DFS is play 150 lineups. This is the kind of situation where 150 maxers do have an advantage because there's a pretty good chance that I end up just saying like, okay, I'm going to end up with 65% Jokic and I'm just going to play like every viable cheap guy and assume a couple of them go off because there's 11 games. If you're playing if you're limited to one or two lineups, you obviously have to like pick the correct cheap guy, which good luck, honestly, like this, where a lot of them don't look very good.
Do you want anything else here for Denver? I think if Will Barton is in, and it appears that he is, 6K on FanDuel looks pretty good. He is getting that ownership though, but it's mostly just Barton and Gordon as possibles for me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. If they land in a lineup or two, that's fine. But Jokic, the clear priority. And whenever Jokic plays, unless other pieces are missing, there's nothing else to really see.
All right. 525 people in here, only 115 likes. That's just not going to get it done, guys. Hit that thumbs up. Let's run that number up a little bit. I mean, we should be at 200 here pretty easily. So if you haven't done it yet, please hit the thumbs up button on this video. Go to Memphis.
There's no such thing as a bad matchup for Jokic.
No, not at all.
Somebody said Minnesota's a bad matchup. Like they're good defensively, but it doesn't matter.
No, that is not the team that's the bad matchup for Jokic. Like, you could have less than ideal matchups. You know, the Giannis's of the world, Embiid to a degree. Like there are guys that can be the same size as him. That's the best it's going to be. But
he's too good at passing for it to really be an issue.
Yeah, you can't send doubles to the best passer in the league at 7 feet tall. Like he's going to just find somebody that's wide open every single time.
By the way, I don't know if
Cat is very much a pushover. Ask Jimmy Butler.
By the way, not sure if you were in chat last night, but me and Lofty were kind of splitting hairs between Kevin Durant or Jokic is the best player in the league. It was pointed out to me that I obviously do not watch basketball because Jokic is not a top 3 player in the NBA.
Yeah, that's preposterous. It's truly preposterous. I did have it on. I was talking to Lofty about it when I was trying to let him know that I wasn't referencing your ad reads on your video. Yeah. I was just talking about Lofty just doing an incredible read for HelloFresh, a sponsor that isn't ours. But no, I did hear everything you guys were doing. I was just still working my way through the rotations. Yeah, he just is. It's not a fluke anymore. It's been like 2 straight years of him nuking everything. Anyway, Memphis Grizzlies, 1-point dogs in Portland, 219 total. On the Memphis side, still no Ja, no Brandon Clark, no Zaire Williams. On the Portland side, still no CJ, no Cody Zeller. Lots to like here for Memphis, I think. Jaren Jackson continues to be interesting, 6,400 on FanDuel. He's pulling 30% ownership. He's 7,200 on DraftKings, not as ideal of a price tag. We got Dylan Brooks at 6,200 on FanDuel, pulling a bunch of ownership. He's 11% owned on DraftKings. Tyus Jones is pulling 16% on FanDuel. All that makes some sense. It doesn't make sense to me that Desmond Bane is 3.5% owned on FanDuel at 6,400 in comparison to some of these ownership numbers. So I like Bane as a GPP option. What are you doing with the Grizz?
This is another tournament team for me. This slate's kind of weird. Like there's just entire teams where I think they're good in tournaments, but that's kind of what happens when you get very concentrated ownership and very obvious mid-range plays. Is it pushes down the ownership on like the second best tier of mid-range plays, and Memphis gives you a lot of those. Jaren Jackson at 7,200. If he can stay out of foul trouble, he's likely to play 30 plus minutes. He played 26 last game. That was a game where the Grizzlies destroyed the Sixers and nobody had to play down the stretch, but he is, when he's not in foul trouble, he's playing 32 to 34 minutes. He's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Morant this year, 30.6% usage rate. So that I think looks really good at pretty low ownership. Dylan Brooks leads the way on DraftKings at 12% ownership. He has a 30.7% usage rate and has averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute without Morant on the floor this year. So I think he looks good. Desmond Bane has a 24% usage rate, has averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute. He is 6,300. Looks pretty good to me. Tyus Jones at 6,100 is fine. He's likely to give you 32 to 34 minutes. He's averaged 0.97 DraftKings points per minute. This is just like a team full of guys that are not the number 1 plays at their positions, but I think they're like third and not getting much ownership.
Yeah, I'm going to end up having way too much Memphis, although they are getting a bit more ownership on FanDuel than they are on DraftKings, but I'm not getting away from Jaren Jackson. That's for sure. And if Desmond Bane's 4% owned, that's my GPP play for today. I like Memphis. I like Portland too.
Memphis is just like always a good tournament team because there's so much volatility for different reasons in so many of these players. Jaren Jackson, it's because he fouls too much. Dylan Brooks is because he can't shoot. Desmond Bane is actually pretty efficient, but he has to contend with Dylan Brooks and Jaren Jackson. So there's volatility where like these guys have enough just like absolute dumpster fire games that their salaries don't really go up and people don't really want to play them. But on the other end, when Jaren Jackson doesn't get in foul trouble or when Dylan Brooks actually has a game where his shots are falling, they just completely destroy their salaries.
I don't feel like I ever get them right. That's the problem. Whenever I think it's the Bane day, it's the Brooks day. Whenever I think it's Tyus
Is that exclusive
Jones,
to Memphis
D'Anthony
for you?
Melton.
Because it kind of feels like just in general.
Portland Trailblazers. Damian Lillard. 8,700 coming off of a few minutes yesterday. And by a few, I mean 47 in overtime. So Dame, 20% owned. Love him on FanDuel. Once again, I'll be going there pretty aggressively. 9,900 on DraftKings, I think still looks good. So no one on Portland is more than 10% owned on DK. I like Lillard and Powell and Simons and Nance and Covington a little bit more than the public does. On FanDuel, though, Lillard's at 20. I want to have more. Norm Powell is at 20. I think that's about right because he's only 5,700 there. Nurkic is 24% owned on FanDuel. I think that's going to require a conversation. He's 5,900 on FanDuel today, 7,800 on DraftKings, slightly different price tags. And then Larry Nance, while he's 5,400 and that's not the best price tag, he's 2% owned on FanDuel. If you're asking me if I'm playing Nurkic or Nance today, from a GPP perspective, I'd like to have a little bit more unowned Larry Nance. Let's talk through this game because yesterday's rotation and the fact that they went to overtime, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned the pricing difference on Nurkic. I actually played FanDuel yesterday, had tons of Nurkic because he was 6K. Now he's 5,900. The issue is that, since you can only roster one center, wherever you have Nurkic, you don't have Jokic, and that's not to mention the other, 20 centers that are playable. So it's kind of, even
they're
though
starting to look like tight end to me. And Jokic is like Travis Kelce.
It's tight end if tight ends were good.
Sure.
It's like if you could only play one wide receiver.
Yeah, that works.
So the thing you have to keep in mind is Nurkic is very clearly underpriced at 5,900 in the sense that he's as likely as anyone to 6x his salary. But you kind of also just need the raw points at that position because you're going to be able to, fit in value elsewhere. So if Nurkic goes for 36, there's a pretty good chance that just sort of ends up being a useless score. And so I think that more like if he were 5,900 on DraftKings, it would just be like jam him in. It doesn't matter. You can play other centers elsewhere. But on FanDuel, I think the conversation is a little bit more interesting, even when somebody is clearly underpriced like Nurkic is. On DraftKings, I think it's a tournament play. He's okay in tournaments, but not a priority for me. That's kind of how I feel about all of Portland. Lillard at 9,900 looks fine. I don't think he looks drastically different than Trae Young or DeJounte Murray. Any of those guys are reasonable, but Lillard is only getting 9% ownership, so that's nice. Norman Powell at 6,500 gets a nice usage bump without CJ McCollum, but he's also 6,500 on a slate where that price point is kind of reserved for people that are better than Norman Powell from a fantasy standpoint. Larry Nance played 28 minutes last game, played well. He's 4,600. I still think he has 30 minutes in his range of outcomes, but his price tag also, came up a little bit. So not a whole lot that stands out to me on DraftKings from Portland.
All righty. Perfect. Your Wizards, 1.5 point dogs in Sacramento, 225 total. Word on the street is that Kyle Kuzma is questionable. Beal, Kuzma, Dinwiddie, KCP, Gafford, Montrezl Harrell, all like 10% owned depending on the site or sometimes across both sites. Do you see anybody that is an actual priority to you?
From the Clippers?
From the Washington Wizards.
Did not even see that game. Skipped over it.
That's fine.
Thought the Clippers were the only game left. No, I don't. I mean, Dinwiddie it's a really good matchup. We know that. Yeah. Dinwiddie at 5,500 is somewhat interesting. He has not been very good this year. The playing time hasn't been very appealing. Washington had said they were going to start ramping up his minutes in non-back-to-backs. If anything, he has been playing less minutes because that's what NBA coaches do. I think you still project him for 30 minutes. 30 minutes of Dinwiddie at 5,500 against the Kings looks pretty good. There is some chance he plays a few minutes more. I don't think it's a particularly great chance at this point. So Dinwiddie looks okay. Beal in the spot looks okay. Same goes for Kuzma. But as usual with Washington, I think the most appealing tournament spots are going to be grabbing one of Harrell or Gafford. They're splitting minutes. Harold's 5,100 on DraftKings. Gafford's 4,800. If any game where one of them happens to play 26 to 28 minutes, they're likely to do well. There's no real way to guess when that's going to be. I think that's a specifically DraftKings thing as well, because I certainly don't want to use my one center spot on those guys.
On the Sacramento side, Harrison Barnes is the only guy in double digits in ownership. I'm anxiously awaiting for chat to just freak out about that. Like it's not, like it doesn't make sense. Let's talk about why Alex Len is only projected for 7.5% ownership at 3,200 on DraftKings, because that seems really weird to me.
Doesn't seem that weird to me.
I mean, dude's just playing normal starting rotations, first quarter rotation, second quarter rotation, third quarter rotation.
For now.
Right. But like we also don't have a reason to suspect that that's not going to be the case moving forward. They appear to have excised Tristan Thompson, went to Damian Jones in the first half. Terrence Davis doesn't appear to be like an actual part of the rotation any longer, although did play 17 minutes, but we could talk about that because they got their ass kicked 2 nights ago. I like Alex Len a lot for 3,200 if he's going to continue to start and at least get the first 3 rotations. Assuming Sacramento is in the game, he could very easily close.
I was going to say that's the real question is, does he close? And we don't really know because Sacramento hasn't had to show that yet. If he plays 22 minutes, he's fine as a value. The issue, though, is the opportunity cost of using a center spot. I want Jokic. I want on FanDuel, I want Nurkic. But on FanDuel, he's a power forward too, right? Len?
Yes. 4,100, though, on FanDuel. But
okay, yeah.
You like the flexibility, and he's unowned.
Right. On DraftKings, it's a good value, and the opportunity cost isn't quite as high because you can roster 2 centers, but it's still higher than it would be if you were a different position. If he plays 22 minutes, he's likely to get you, 20 fantasy points or so at 3,200, which is okay. Where he really becomes good is if he does get that closing rotation and plays 26, 27 minutes. I have no idea if that happens. It's very easy to see a closing lineup where they go small, but they also haven't really done that a whole lot this year. So it's kind of messy. Like there's no reason they couldn't close with Fox, Halliburton, Barnes, Hield, and Davion Mitchell, or Bagley or whatever. But they haven't really been playing Bagley at the 5, so it's hard to expect that to be the case. So I do think, I guess the one thing working in Len's favor is the volatility, right? If you were getting like 20% ownership, then the negative arguments I'm making would carry more weight. Since he's getting 7% ownership, the positive argument of I have no idea what the closing lineup looks like, it very well could include Alex Len, makes him more appealing.
Yeah, that's where I'm looking at it, where I think the most likely scenario if this game is close is that Alex Len is the closing center for this team. I don't know if that most likely scenario is like a 50% probability, but I don't see anybody else that has a better shot to close than Alex Len.
Yeah, someone in chat said, imagine trusting Len on a large slate. Absolutely do not trust Len, but neither does anybody else. And if he happens to play 26 or 27 minutes, which is a decent chance, if nobody else is there, then I'll take it.
And I also don't give a single shit about trust at 3,200.
I would still rather go to other. If I knew for a fact Alex Len was not going to play more than 21 minutes, I wouldn't really be that interested.
Sum up the rest of Sacramento. We only have 2 minutes. And then we do have to get to that Clippers game.
Yeah. Halliburton's still interesting to me at 6K. He's been playing huge minutes lately. Obviously, he didn't in the last game because they just got absolutely destroyed by the Raptors. But you'd been getting games where he was playing 36 minutes pretty consistently. So at 6K and probably not much ownership, I do have some interest in going back to Halliburton. Had way too much of him last time, but he's getting 3% ownership. That's pretty appealing to me. Harrison Barnes at 5,600 still looks fine. Hasn't been playing well, but he's likely to give you 30 to 32 minutes at least. And he's pretty cheap.
All right. Let's close it out with your Clippers. No, that's not your Clippers. It was your Wizards. Clippers, 8.5-point dogs in Utah, 215 total. We don't yet know the status on Paul George. He is questionable, as is Nick Batum. That matters for this team. There's no ownership coming in at all. I have George in No ownership at all. I've got a little bit of interest in him at 8,900 if he plays on FanDuel, but I don't really want anything from the Clippers.
Yeah, I don't really see much here. The prices have come up a bit from George being out. I have him in right now as well. Also, just a brutal matchup going into Utah. Only a 104 implied total for the Clips. So, like, if George is out, guys like Jackson, Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard start to look better. But Mann's still 5,300. Kennard's 5,200. Jackson's up to 6,800. So, I don't know that I'd really be prioritizing anything here anyway. But if George is in, I'm certainly not.
No news for Utah, which means they're at full strength. 12% owned Donovan Mitchell on FanDuel at 8,300 is the only guy in double digits. And that's exactly how I feel. There are no priorities for Utah. Take anybody that actually plays 30 minutes and you're good to go.
Yep, that's how I see it. Mitchell, Gobert, Conley, Clarkson, Bogdanovich, you're not really going wrong with any of those guys. They're correctly priced, but they're not going to get a whole lot of ownership either. Whiteside at 3,600 is not the end of the world in tournaments. You're just hoping Gobert gets in foul trouble or that Whiteside doubles in 16 minutes. But he's like the $3,600 version of Hernan Gomez, where normally he's going to play 15, 16 minutes and not really be useful, but he just produces more fantasy points per minute than anyone around him.
Injury report show later today. Adam, your new pre-records for GPP plays also coming out today?
Yeah, tournament plays should be out, I think, like 1:30-ish. Injury report will be out around 2:30, and deeper dive at 4:45 with you.
Yes, with me. NBA, my contenders videos, FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, coming up shortly. Ran out of time this morning, so we're going to get them out now. Good luck, everybody. NFL Strategy Show Ownership Edition coming up next. Good luck, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Thank you, PrizePicks.